Meet Percy Smizer. He was born January 5, 1931 and owns a farm in Bruno, a rural town in Saskatchewan, Canada. Percy has been farming for over 55 years, growing and breeding his very own canola crop. In his years of farming, he also met his wife of 50 years, Louise, and together they have 5 children and 15 grandchildren. As they grew old, they hoped to pass down their farm and their hand-bred harvest of canola seeds that they worked so hard to perfect down to their kids. However, this dream would not be realized. In 1997, nearby farmers had willingly decided to grow a brand new canola for the ever-expanding company Monsanto. Monsanto, a biotechnology and industrial agriculture-based company and leader in transgenic crop production, was eager to test out their new patented crop in these Canadian fields. Unfortunately for Percy Smizer, due to pollen drift and weather over the years, the GM canola had crossbred with his strand of canola crop that he had created through years of selective crossbreeding. But that was the least of his troubles, for soon after, Percy was in turn sued by Monsanto for patent infringement, and a trial was held in front of the Canadian Federal Court June 5th through June 20th, 2000. Monsanto argued that he was growing their seeds without their permission, though they did not fail to justify how in fact the seeds ended up in the Smizer's farm. To Percy's dismay, the court ruled in Monsanto's favor, but Percy Smizer was not going to give up easy, and he appealed his case to the Canadian Supreme Court January 20, 2004. The court still felt Monsanto's patent was valid, but that Percy did not owe the multi-million-dollar corporation the original $400,000 settlement. Since then, Smizer has become an international symbol and spokesman for independent farmers' rights and regulations on transgenic crops. In 2007, him and his wife, Louise Smizer, received the Right Livelihood Award for their efforts. But this was just the start. This has been the time, these last few decades, that GMOs have entered society on a global scale at such a rapid rate due to large companies and scientific advancements that everyday citizens are virtually unaware of what they eat, how it is produced, and how it has affected our generation as well as future generations. So, what exactly is a genetically modified organism, or GMO? Throughout the 1920s, plants had first been exposed to X-rays to form a process called mutational breeding. A variety of plants, such as rice, oats, wheat, and the common bean, underwent gamma rays, thermal neutrons, and other forms of X-ray technology in the hopes that it would induce beneficial mutations in these crops. It remained popular in the United States all through the 1970s until new breakthroughs would soon show through. Going into the 1980s, new techniques of recombinant DNA were emerging. It wasn't until this decade that the first transgenic crops were introduced. Monsanto funded a group at Washington University, and together they were able to successfully alter the genes of Nicotiana plumbaginifolia, an ordinary tobacco plant, in 1983. In the same year, they were also able to insert a plant gene from one species to another. In the 1980s and 1990s, these GMO techniques parted ways from universities and biotechnology firms were formed. At this time, the idea was very new and concerns for safety were sidelined. However, in 1994, from the new firms came the first genetically modified crop introduced into the commercial market, the tomato plant. Since then, many more have followed, from BT corn, to wheat, to soy, to canola, to legumes, to fruit, and even our milk and chickens, as well as other livestock. Virtually everything we eat is genetically modified in the sense that the DNA has been altered. But why was this done? Were our crops not good enough the way they were? Genetically modified crops and organisms were created because the world felt that it needed a second green revolution, the biotechnical revolution, which would apply science and DNA technologies to commercial agriculture. Plants have now been modified to benefit society in many ways. One of the most common genetic modifications of plants includes herbicide tolerance, where plants are given a gene that allows farmers to spray the weed killer glyphosate, known to most farmers and gardeners as Roundup, without harming the plant itself. Another gene used is from the soil bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis that allows plants to produce their own insecticide. The goal of GMOs is to produce fresh, flavorful, and long-lasting crops in large quantities to help meet the demands of the global food supply.
Well, GMOs are good and bad. There's definitely two schools of thought on that. For society, one of the things they're doing is they're creating larger amounts of food products by actually having smaller areas that they require. So that's actually a good thing because they are able to feed more people.
However, it poses the question, What measures are being taken to produce these specific crops so rapidly? There are two ways that transgenic crops can be created. The first is using a gene gun. Genes are fired into the cell's nucleus at random, and as plants remain in the cell's DNA. The cell is the first cell, or the embryo, of the species being modified. The other method of transgenic crop production is known as the agrobacterium method. The bacteria species Agrobacterium tumefaciens has the capability to attach itself to a host plant and in turn transfer a piece of DNA into the plant's chromosomes. With these methods of production, many have been left to question the efficacy and repercussions of these GMOs. Industrial agriculture, though it has put in much effort, has not produced more food, but instead has destroyed diverse sources of food. As Vandana Shiva stated in her controversial novel Stolen Harvest, genetic engineering has been sold as a green technology that will protect nature and biodiversity. However, the tools of genetic engineering are designed to steal nature's harvest by destroying biodiversity, increasing the use of herbicides and pesticides, and spreading the risk of irreversible genetic pollution. What has happened is that these genetically modified species breed with their original predecessors and in turn destroy the existence of these crops, for these DNA transformations cannot be reversed.
One of the bad aspects of that is that on all these third world countries that we're selling these seeds to, these seeds have a 1-year lifespan. It's like they never produce seeds on their own, so they have to buy those seeds over and over and over again versus a crop that would naturally produce its own seeds.
Thousands of species of plants have been lost from their original form, which leaves the question, is a GMO plant grown organically really organic? Vandana pointed out in regards to this issue, in order for food corporations to gain total control over the food system, they would attempt to destroy the organic option for farmers and consumers through a USDA policy. The policy, Shiva continues, would allow fruits and vegetables that have been genetically engineered, irradiated, treated with additives, and raised on contaminated sewage sludge to be labeled organic. Quote, organic livestock would be able to be housed in batteries, fed with offal of other animals, and injected with biotics. During these last few decades, society has been experiencing many new health risks. Women nowadays are far more susceptible to infertility and miscarriages than ever before, and genetic disorders such as autism are appearing more and more commonly each year. Also, the 90s gave light to ADD and ADHD, a disorder that presents itself in adolescence, something that used to not even occur within society. Many scientists link the recent medical issues to society's diet that consists of almost all genetically modified foods. The global population as a whole is also at risk for any number of diseases that could come from GMOs. Many transgenic plants are made resistant to a disease by using the gene for the virus's coat protein. It is possible that these viral genes may cause new diseases and create major epidemics.
Also, there is some school of thought that maybe these things are potentially dangerous. We've had some crossover for things that were supposed to be corn that were not supposed to be fed to for human consumption, and it's cross-pollinated with corn that we eat, and so all of a sudden we're getting these things happening. Animals that normally eat pollen of these plants, like the monarch butterfly as it travels through its journey, are dying from eating this pollen. So if the insects are dying from eating this pollen, what else are these GMOs possibly doing to us health-wise?
The method of creation is highly unstable, and no proper testing nor have safety regulations been made by the FDA or the government. Absolutely no ecological or food safety tests have been conducted on genetically engineered crops and food before commercialization. GMOs have been considered as a novel invention. However, when the corporations making these claims want to avoid safety assessments, they refer to the transgenic organisms as being equivalent to their natural growing plants. The claims the corporations have made are unfortunately the basis for the guidelines of how the FDA approves their crops, with the assumption that modified organisms behave like their natural occurring counterparts. Most notably, no proper labeling has been made required for any transgenic crop or livestock. There is virtually no avoiding these crops, and billions of people are unaware that they are consuming these foods. The United States, as well as the world, is in the midst of a turning point in the field of agriculture. It is still unknown how these genetic modifications will affect the society of now and tomorrow, as well as how it will affect our environment. This is the future of food, and many of us still do not understand the ramifications that are yet to come. For those who are informed, however, they are ready to stand up and fight.